The Carrington estate rose like a monument to old wealth, a sprawling Georgian mansion of polished marble, endless corridors, and immaculate gardens that seemed designed not for comfort but for intimidation, a place where silence itself felt expensive, where every chandelier's glitter whispered of power, and where the staff walked on eggshells not because of Gregory Carrington, the millionaire who owned the house and the empire that funded it, but because of his mother, Eleanor Carrington, a woman so fierce, so impossibly demanding, so utterly unyielding that she had chewed through a parade of nurses, companions, and caretakers like a lion shredding prey. They came with resumes of experience, glowing references, polished manners, but they left in days, some in weeks, many in tears, none able to withstand the storm that was Eleanor, for she was not simply difficult, she was relentless. Her tongue sharper than glass, her will harder than iron, her disdain for weakness carved into every wrinkle of her aristocratic face, and yet beneath that impossible exterior was a truth no one dared face. Eleanor was aging, frail in body if not in spirit, her once commanding stride replaced by the shuffle of a cane, her lungs wheezing in the night, her independence crumbling like the edges of an old photograph. And though she would rather die than admit it, she needed someone, yet no one could endure her long enough to matter. Not until the day Lillian Parker arrived, a woman the staff would whisper about for weeks to come, a woman who would alter the balance of the Carrington household in ways no one had imagined, for she was unlike any other nurse who had walked through those gilded doors. She came without airs, a tall, graceful black woman in her 40s with skin like polished mahogany, eyes steady and patient, and a presence that seemed carved from still water. Deep, calm, unmoved by storms, her suitcase plain, her uniform neatly pressed, her steps firm but unhurried as she crossed the marble foyer where portraits of stern-faced Carrington ancestors looked down in judgment, and the butler, James, who had served the family for 30 years, shook his head almost sympathetically as he escorted her upstairs, muttering under his breath, "Another lamb to the slaughter," because he, more than anyone, had witnessed the battlefield of Eleanor's room, where nurses had been reduced to tears, cooks had been cursed for seasoning food a shade too heavy, doctors dismissed mid-sentence, and even Gregory himself shouted down by his mother's imperious commands. Lillian entered that room to find Eleanor in her armchair, regal as a queen on a crumbling throne, silver hair perfectly coiffed, eyes sharp as daggers despite the shadow of illness under them, her cane at her side like a weapon, and the moment she saw Lillian, she curled her lip into a sneer, her voice slicing through the air. "Another nurse. How many is this now, James? Do they think sending me someone darker makes them tougher? You'll be gone by supper, mark my words," and her laughter rang with bitter triumph, for she relished the sport of breaking them, testing them, proving her superiority by watching them flee. But Lillian did not flinch, did not shrink, did not bristle. She simply set her bag by the dresser, met Eleanor's piercing gaze with a quiet dignity, and said in a voice calm and steady, "Then supper will tell us both something important, won't it?" And in that instant, a flicker of surprise crossed Eleanor's face, quickly hidden, because she was not used to words that did not grovel, did not argue, did not snap back, words that simply were, solid and immovable, and though she snarled, "We'll see," she felt the tiniest tremor in her armor. The first day unfolded as a clash of wills, Eleanor refusing her morning pills, knocking the glass of water to the floor with a smirk as if to say "Fetch it if you dare," demanding meals outside her diet, mocking Lillian's every movement with barbs like, "Too slow, too clumsy, I'm not an invalid, you know," but every insult fell like rain against stone, absorbed, unreacted, and returned with the same patient steadiness. Lillian refilled the glass, placed it gently back, waited until Eleanor's tantrum waned, then offered the pills again without judgment, without force, and at supper, when Eleanor pushed her plate away declaring it inedible slop, Lillian did not scold or plead but simply sat across from her and began eating her own meal in silence until, minutes later, Eleanor, irritated by the lack of attention, grudgingly picked up her fork. The staff watched in awe, whispering in the kitchen that perhaps this one was different, perhaps this nurse had some hidden trick, for no one had seen Eleanor's games met with such calm, and on the second night, when Eleanor rang her bell at 2 in the morning, demanding company because she could not sleep, expecting irritation, expecting protest, she found Lillian sitting quietly by her bed, humming a soft tune, An old hymn from Georgia passed down by her grandmother, a melody so hauntingly gentle it seemed to stroke the air itself, and Eleanor, who had not known peace in months, felt her chest loosen, her jaw unclench, and before she realized it, she drifted into the first full sleep she'd had in ages. By the third day, Eleanor's jabs grew sharper as though trying harder to break her opponent. What do you know of sacrifice? You think wiping old skin makes you noble? You're nothing but a servant dressed in white. But Lillian met even this venom with the same unshakable presence, replying only, I know sacrifice well enough to sit here with you instead of leaving you alone, and for the first time, Eleanor felt the sting of her own cruelty, though she masked it quickly with scorn. Gregory returned from a business trip at the end of that week and was stunned to find his mother not screaming at staff but playing chess with Lillian. Their banter sharp but not venomous, Eleanor scolding her nurse for a clever move but without malice, and he pulled James aside, whispering, What on earth has changed? To which the butler replied simply, She has not broken her yet, but as days turned to weeks, it became clear something more was happening, something unthinkable. Eleanor was bending, slowly, grudgingly, against her own will, because no matter how hard she pushed, this woman stayed, unshaken, and the cracks in her armor began to show. One stormy night Eleanor, trembling with anger and fear, hurled her cane across the room and screamed, Everyone leaves me. Everyone. You'll leave too. Her voice breaking with years of abandonment and loneliness, but instead of retreating, instead of retaliating, Lillian walked across the room, picked up the cane, placed it gently back in Eleanor's trembling hands, and whispered with a steadiness that cut deeper than any argument, I will stay until you ask me to leave, and not a day sooner. And in that moment something broke. Not Lillian, but Eleanor, who, for the first time in years, allowed her tears to fall, not the angry tears of pride, but the raw tears of a woman who had built walls so high no one dared climb them, and in that crack of vulnerability, she did the unthinkable. She let herself trust, just a little, a trust born not of weakness but of finally meeting someone who would not run, and as the thunder rolled outside and Eleanor wept quietly into the night, the Carrington estate held its breath, for the impossible mother had finally met her match.